Open the podcast bay door as hell.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 154 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I want to help others join me in those pursuits, but I found that sometimes people can get overwhelmed or feel left out because they don't already have what some consider to be the requisite knowledge to be considered a fan. And that's where Welcome to Geektown comes in. Here you can ask your questions without feeling like a gatekeeper is calling you out for not yet being fully versed in every aspect of your new interest. We're nearing the end of June, so before it comes to a close, I want to make sure to include the monthly shoutout to my patrons, which are Mike Sterling, Justin Bailey, Lily Breen, Jesse Clark, Ricky Garvin, Rob Garrison, Aaron Woodward, Aaron Borst, Carla Hoffman, Lyndon Onstead, Julio Herrera, and Matthew Saint. Thank you once again for your continued support. And if you want to join in with helping the show out, it's just $1 per month, and that gets you this monthly shoutout, as well as audio outtakes and full scripts of every written show. Now, this week we are beginning our deep dive into Marvel's latest Disney Plus show, Secret Invasion. As always for these discussions, I find a guest, and for this show, that will be Dag. I'll let him take the floor and introduce himself and what makes him a citizen of Geektown. Take it away.
Hey everybody, this is Dag. Many of you might know me from Beyond Trek podcast. On there, we wax everything about Star Trek. In addition to Star Trek, I am an avid Middle-earth, Marvel Cinematic Universe, DC Expanded Universe. Gosh, there's so many other fandoms out there that I'm a part of. Did I say Star Wars yet? Yeah, no. I've been known to get into long, lengthy arguments over many cups of different kinds of libations the last 30 years. So I hope that enables me to be a citizen with a firm root here in Geektown.
Well, if you're into anything to a geeky extent, then you're a citizen. Opinion, whether you're just getting into the Marvel Cinematic Universe or you've been reading the comics for 30 years, which would be where I'm at. Now, I know we talked a little bit before you came on, and you've read some of the comics, but you're not familiar with the Secret Invasion miniseries or anything like that, right?
I mean, beyond the fact that it involved like the Skrulls masquerading as people in the comics, not really. Right. I was a big X-Men fan back in the day. So let's see, I got into just like the Marvel trading cards when I was about 11 years old. I had that. So like Marvel Universe Series 3, and I still have the full set of that and X-Men Series 2. And that was really what got me in there. My friends who were collecting that were like, what about the TV show? And I was like, there's a TV show? So I'm watching Saturday morning Fox, and now I have that series on DVD, and I'm eagerly awaiting X-Men 97 from the MCU.
Yep.
It was shortly after that I got into high school and discovered Magic the Gathering. And I think at that point, my mom was just glad that I wasn't into drugs. Yeah.
Weren't you though? I mean,
I was not though. Like
I made
Magic
it all the
way
the Gathering.
Cardboard crack as they call it.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely one of those things. Between Magic the Gathering and Star Trek, I had one personality in high school. It was let's talk about Star Trek or Magic, or get mad at me for killing the curve in biology again.
But anyways, why don't we get to the reason we're here, which is talking about Secret Invasion.
None. Oh man, I was pretty impressed. I'm still eager where they're going with this, but yeah.
Yeah, this was a really tight, strong opening episode, I would say.
Yeah.
We set the stakes pretty quickly with this opening scene of Ross and Prescott talking to each other. And the Skrulls are looking to start a war between the US and Russia and hope to use the chaos to take over the planet.
I really, really like that they opened it with a monologue that was basically social commentary for what's happening today.
Yeah.
Misinformation can be trusted and maybe it can't be trusted. And they're just basically talking about what's happening in the world today, drawing everybody in, whatever information you don't trust or do trust. Everybody's drawn into that plot. And then they go, but they may not be human. And then you're like, okay, so here's the swerve into fantasy.
Yeah. And I didn't watch Game of Thrones, but apparently the actor who played Prescott was in a dozen or more episodes of that show. And that voice delivering that monologue was just that gravel and that deep bass telling you it's Skrulls. He draws you in with this voice and you really want to listen to what he's saying.
Yeah. This is a man who has seen some stuff.
Yeah. Richard Dormer is the name of the actor.
You know, I didn't know who was. I knew one of those people was going to be a Skrull, and I was like,
right.
They want me to think it's this other guy, but it's totally going to be Ross. But then he chokes out Ross, and then Ross shoots him, and he doesn't break character until the very end. So I thought that was pretty well done.
Yeah, I thought so too. That's going to be part of the thing of the whole show is who's a Skrull and when. And like, how long have they been there? Which I think is a good question for Ross. How long has Ross been a Skrull? Because he's there long enough to have the equipment and everything he needs to call in for an extract from Maria.
When was the last time we saw Ross in the MCU? Was it Civil War?
No, it was more recent than that. Yeah, he was in Wakanda Forever.
Oh, right.
The aftermath of the bridge fight, and we see him and Julia Louis-Dreyfus and their relationship.
Because he's got those communication beads.
Yeah.
I remember that. So we've seen him as late as last year, potentially actually being him.
Yeah. So probably not too long, maybe a month or so.
Yeah. If I were a Skrull, I would definitely want to shut down an asset who had stumbled onto evidence of our misdeeds. So this could be a temporary thing.
That's true. Now, I noticed we didn't see him in the what they call the fracking pods later. We do see at least one character that we find out is a Skrull in there. It's very brief, but we do see it, and we can talk about that when we get there in the story. So it could be that it was just a very temporary thing to use Ross as the agent that this guy would trust in order to get the information. But obviously that didn't work because Prescott's like, wait, you want to take this information? No, you're a Skrull.
That scene was very tense, immediately tense. And they didn't let it draw out. As you said at the beginning, this was very well cut, very tight.
Yeah. And then, like you said, Ross shoots Prescott and then takes off and calls into Maria for an extract. And we get this nice chase scene through the streets of Moscow, up the stairs to the roof. I like the tracking shot of following the stairs up. Now, how familiar are you with Ross from the comics?
Not at all.
Okay. He was originally a supporting character in Black Panther from Christopher Priest's run. And when I first saw that Martin Freeman was taking the role, I was like, oh, that's perfect. Because Ross is usually this kind of... He's good at what he does, but he's just a little awkward about it. And so when Ross tried to leap from one roof to the other and didn't make it, I was like, oh yeah, there's the Ross I know.
it wasn't the Ross we knew.
Except it wasn't the Ross I know.
I'm very interested in, because they made it a point to show that Skrulls were so much stronger and could endure more and dexterous than us that I was really surprised looking back at that didn't make it.
It's true. Their capabilities are definitely greater than an average human. But then when you're being the human shell, when you're trying to avoid detection, like once you kind of hit action mode, even if you're a little old lady like in Captain Marvel, you can flip around and kick ass. But
yeah,
I don't know when they're in the extreme stealth mode trying to avoid detection if they reduce their abilities in any way.
We know that Talos was able to single-handedly lift Fury off the floor in 95 because he did that in the archives.
Right.
And we know the Russian artist was given Talos a pounding.
Oh, yeah.
He was already masked as a giant human anyway, so we'll see. We'll see how that pans out.
Yeah.
Then we get I don't know if you're ready to move on from there.
Well, actually, I want to talk a little bit about Talos and his comic book origins, because the first time I saw him in comics was his first appearance, but he's introduced in such a way that it feels like he has this grand history that you just maybe hadn't read about yet.
Wow.
Because he shows up in issue 418 of The Incredible Hulk.
418?
Yes.
That's recent. That's like 90s.
Yeah. This is the wedding issue of Rick Jones and Marlowe, and he shows up at the wedding because a bunch of villains got invites sent to them by the Impossible Man, who wanted to cause chaos. And he shows up and it's like, oh, that's Talos the Untamed. He was captured by Krees and refused to commit ritual suicide, and now all the Skrulls refuse to acknowledge his existence, and he's one of the few Skrulls that can't shapeshift, but he's a mutant with super strength instead. And like I said, he has this grand introduction, but it's actually the first time we've ever seen him in the comics. And it's just a great issue. Peter David writing and Gary Frank on art. It's one of my favorites. So
Peter David is renowned in many circles.
Yes.
He hits my Star Trek vibe a lot.
Oh, yeah, me too. I have basically all of his Star Trek novels.
Imzadi Triangle.
Yeah.
The whole
Q
new Frontier
squared.
series. Oh, Q squared. Be still my heart.
Yeah.
I have that on audiobook read by John Delancey.
Oh, nice. I have the hardcover signed by Peter. But let's get back to the show. After the Talos reveal, we go straight into the opening credits, which you have a still from as your background image here in our Zoom call. Now, what did you think of that opening title sequence?
So, I mean, obviously, we already know there's a controversy. We'll probably get to that in a sec. But
yeah.
I thought, just talking artistically, stylistically, and not about the origin, but artistically and stylistically, I think it fit the theme of ever shifting, ever changing, something looking like what you want it to look like, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, very watercolor, very artistically styled, but still emphasizing the discomfort that comes with an uncanny valley.
Yeah, I think that was the point of it, is they wanted to make you uncomfortable. They wanted you to feel like this isn't quite right. And so I think for their purposes, that's a really good use of AI art, because it's still in that infancy stage where it doesn't quite match what your eyes are expecting to see. It's still just a little off, especially normally in the hands.
Right. The hands get all weird.
Usually there's an extra digit or two there, but this time they got the number right. It just still, like you said, looks a little off. Even still, it looks a little impressionistic.
Yeah.
And then making it moving images adds to that.
I know there's a lot of people out there who are like, why did they let AI do this instead of getting an artist to do this? And I think there's merit to their arguments that actual artists should have been paid for their time to do this, especially we're in the middle of a big writer's strike. So a lot of people in Hollywood are seeing their jobs being taken away because AI is being used to generate scripts, it's being used to generate art. What else is it going to be done? But on the other side of the coin, they say that Marvel came out and said nobody, there were no jobs impacted by the use of AR for the credit sequence, but it's not like Kevin Feige is sitting behind AI prompt engineering this. They clearly hired a prompt engineer to generate the stills that then animated, or even just generated the animation in such a way that made it this disconcerting.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't find a prompt engineer like that run of the mill. There are really, really good prompt engineers. There are a lot of people that are focusing on realism in art. And this is a pretty good example of staying within an artistic category and still producing something that requires a lot of practice, if not training.
Yeah, I have a friend on my Twitter feed who considers herself an AI artist. So I know from watching some of her kind of behind the scenes stuff that you can't just type secret invasion title sequence.
Right.
And and expect it to come up with something that is actually usable.
Yeah.
You need to know how the machines work and how they react to various prompts. And I'm sure even though it was done, maybe the primary image generation was done in AI, I'm sure that they had to do some sort of touch up and smoothing over of between frames and things like that a standard title sequence art team would work on.
Yeah, it would be really interesting to see how they made this, how they constructed this sequence, and what elements were from the prompt engineering and what elements were from putting it in a blend tool or a morph or something.
Mm-hmm.
That would then require a digital artist, in which case Marvel's not incorrect when they say nobody lost a job just because they failed.
Right.
If we ever get to the point where we can say, generate a TV show opening sequence in this style of art, I expect the interface to be voice activated and prefix word needs to be Jarvis.
Or computer.
But we're in the MCU, so I'll also accept Friday.
Okay. But probably enough AI talk for now. We finish up with the credits and we get the spaceship arriving on a beam of light. And I love that shot. Of course, they used it in the trailer of the backlit silhouette, and it looks like one of those gray aliens at first because of how everything's blown out and the head looks all skinny and everything. And then he steps forward and no, it's just Nick Fury.
Yeah, I really appreciated that he came back. I was very much like, that bum knee, that's real obvious. What's going on there?
Yeah, this whole show is going to be everyone's not who they seem. And I have a feeling that knee is absolutely fine.
Me too.
He is just setting up right from the beginning. And even if no one is watching or he doesn't know that anybody's watching, he's going to put up that appearance.
There was a conversation that happened later in this episode that I'm like, you're wrong.
Yeah. I know exactly the conversation you're talking about.
So he meets up with Hill.
Yes.
And they have a few words talking about how, I think she mentions for the first time, like, this is where the blip may have like messed with him.
So she is the first of 3 people to say that to him in this episode. They're really pushing that hard. So I'm wondering if that's his character arc. Is he changed after the blip and this is bringing him back to who he was? Or this is him now accepting who he is now? One of those two.
Yeah, I've got a third option for you.
Okay.
he's on top of his game, and he's been playing like he's lost it since the blip because he knew about this invasion before anybody else did.
Ah,
You got to write that story early, and there's nobody else in the MCU who could do that like Nick Fury.
I would accept that, except for the chess game conversation.
Mm.
The fact that Hill specifically calls out, hey, we used to tell the truth to each other, and he's like, okay, let me tell you like it is. I had a crisis of faith. To me, that's him being honest with her at that point, and I would feel kind of betrayed if he wasn't telling the truth to her.
I have a twist I want to talk about at the end
Okay.
that we can revisit this part of the conversation.
All right, fair enough. Moving on then, we get the conversation between Nick and Talos up on the roof.
I found this to be a very rare display of affection between Nick Fury and anybody else in the MCU. When
Oh yeah.
he brought
Yeah.
Talos in for a very warm embrace. That was touching.
Well, I mean, he's known Talos now for 30 years. So it makes sense that they would be that close at this point. And we find out here that Soren is dead, which is very sad for Talos. That's his wife and the mother of his daughter.
It may also be like the light, the fire lit under him that made him choose a side, or at least like firmly pushed him into the corner that he was leading him to.
Maybe. Although it feels like he's still the character that he was in Captain Marvel, basically. So I don't think he's gone through a big change yet. Although I have a theory that we can get into later.
One times. That very first moment when he walks out, meets Talos, there is Skrull Skyplant. And they have this sort of offhand conversation about how it's adapted to the atmosphere. And I'm like, that feels like strong foreshadowing about like the Skrulls adapting to Earth.
Yeah, well, I mean, they kind of call it out in the next couplet of, you always thought that could happen. And he's like, I still do.
It also supplies that adaptability might be inherent to the Skrull homeworld's entire biosphere.
Which makes sense.
Yeah.
If you have a sentient race that is that adaptable, it makes sense that they would evolve from other life forms that are equally adaptable, that their whole world can change.
They talk about, I didn't capture his name. I should have had subtitles on, but there's a Skrull that's basically preying on the vulnerable rage of younger Skrulls.
Yes,
radicalizing them.
Gravik.
Gravik, right?
Gravik is our big bad, at least for this episode, and probably for the majority of the show.
Yeah. Again, it's another social commentary on how highly charismatic people can take advantage of vulnerable, angry people and get them to do things they wouldn't normally.
Yeah, he's radicalizing the youth, and I'm sure people on both sides of the aisle, they think the other side is actively doing that as we speak.
Yeah, I can see that as well. Then we go from that. Was there anything else in that conversation that spoke out to you?
Well, I like that this is the first time that we get a mention of Carol Danvers in here. So we get kind of a little bit of a recap of Captain Marvel. And now something that I thought about, especially on my second viewing, because I watched this 3 times. Once just to watch it for the enjoyment, second time for notes, and then the third time right before we talk so that it's fresh in my head. And the Skrulls are looking for a home planet, a new planet to call home. You know that planet that Thanos had retired to and seemed to have lots of life and seemed really idyllic? Why couldn't they go there?
Hey, we killed Thanos here, so why don't you just move here? There's a farm.
There's a farm. It's an empty, it's otherwise an empty but life-rich planet. There's plenty of plants. Or why weren't they taken to nowhere? That seems like a planet out or a space station full of refugees.
On the flip side of that argument, when you've got somebody who is as interested in radicalizing a group of people to their own end, you don't tell them about the happy ending alternative that they could have for free.
That's true, but that was 5 years ago.
But also, you'd have to know those coordinates, how to get there, those kinds of things.
Yeah. Actually, I take that back, because that scene in Endgame where they kill Thanos.
Oh yeah, that is 18.
That's before the 5 year later jump.
Yeah, so it's been 7 years.
Yeah.
But that information would have to make it to the scrolls, and they'd have to have some means to get there. And if you feel like you're stuck on Earth and you don't have ready access to a spaceship, a Tesseract empowered individual who could travel at light speed, you're not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah. I just hope in Captain Marvel 2 in the Marvels that they make some sort of, because I have no idea like who the big bad is in that movie. So maybe it will relate to this and there will be some sort of Skrull issue going on. But I hope they make some sort of like reference to what did Carol do between movie 1 and movie 2, and why hasn't she been back to help the Skrulls more? Because she said she was going to find them a planet, and she took off with them later, or at the end of the movie, and now they're all on Earth. Why?
Yeah, that is a question to answer. Skip over to Rhodey.
Well, before Rhodey, let's talk a little bit more about Gravik.
Okay. Yeah.
Gravik is actually an original to the MCU. There are a number of named Skrulls in the Marvel comic universe, but Gravik is not one of them. But if you've read the original Secret Invasion miniseries, he's probably closest to Veronki, who is
the Queen.
Yes. Because she was the one who basically said the prophecies have told us that Earth shall be ours. And so it was her idea, the whole Secret Invasion in the comics was her idea, and she was the one who orchestrated all of that. So I would say that she is the closest analog we have to Gravik from the comics. And now he doesn't seem to be a religious extremist like she was in the comics, but there is kind of a cult of personality around him, because we get that conversation later where he's like, are you trying to protect me or the cause? And
you are the cause.
You are the cause. And it's like, oh, that's not good. When you make the cause all about one guy.
Yeah.
Gravik tries to take it back. He says, no, the cause is home. But, you can already see that, like I said, that cult of personality has built up around Gravik. And so there is kind of a religious zealotry to his followers.
Yeah, the hype is strong. I have given tentative credence to a rumor that suggests that he's working for Sharon Carter.
Oh, interesting.
And that Sharon Carter has been Veronki since Winter Soldier.
Okay.
It was an interesting read. There was some good evidence there. I wouldn't say it's 100% compelling, but it's nice to entertain, and I would love for it to happen.
I have gotten burned too many times by big overarching theories that try to tie in disparate
sections. Oh wow, we
yeah,
the same word. That's great.
So I am going to take that with a giant cube of salt, but it's a fun theory nonetheless. in the meantime, we find out that the Skrulls are hiding at off-book abandoned nuclear sites in Russia. They're immune to radioactivity, so that gives them the ability to hang out there without worry. And I thought it was really interesting that the new terrorist group that Prescott had discovered was that the Skrulls were masquerading as or taking over was Americans Against Russia. So that pretty much definitively sets one superpower against another if they come out and take claim for this bomb going off. So that is very dangerous.
One more mirror for today with all of the articles coming out pitting US versus Russia.
Oh yeah. Although right now with Russia invading Ukraine, we have some very good reasons to be opposed to their efforts at this moment.
I would agree.
And yeah, like you mentioned, we get a quick scene with Rhodey and President Dermot Mulroney.
Dermot, who is also, if I understand correctly, a practiced cellist and has sat in on several soundtracks for Michael Giacchino.
Interesting. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, President Mulroney. So this, if we go talk about presidents in the MCU, this is the next president after...
The last president I remember is President Ellis.
Yes.
In Iron Man 3.
President Ellis, which is really funny because the same actor played Ellis in Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, that is funny.
Fun fact. Yeah, but I like that guy. And yeah, I think Ellis even has references as president later than that.
I think you're right, but considering it's been over 8 years since Iron Man 3's story date, it makes sense that we would have a new president at this point. So this is it's a very, very quick scene. I assume that Rhodey and the president, you don't get Dermot Mulroney for just 4 lines. So I assume that he's going to be showing up later. And of course, my first thought is President Skrull.
See, and my first thought was James Rhodes Skrull?
Possibly. My instinct is to go for the president as the Skrull rather than Rhodey because of a few reasons. One, we know that Rhodey's story will be continuing in Armor Wars, and Feige has said that this is kind of a prequel. This is going to be leading into that. And so if you're going to have character development, it doesn't make sense for that character to not be who he is. And then just the fact that it's the president who says, okay, go find Fury, deal with it. That to me says he's the one in charge, and he's specifically saying, go after Fury. And so that would be something that a Skrull would want, is for Fury to have another thing to be worrying about, being hunted down by Rhodey for whatever reason, while also trying to deal with the Skrulls. So those are my thoughts on it.
If that were the case, I'd like to think that Rhodey wouldn't be, I suppose, on the wrong side again. If he was on the Accord side, it would have to be him versus Fury in some way. There'd be an entanglement there.
Well, I could see them having we meet and fight first, but then we realize that we're actually on the same side. Basically, somehow they're fighting and, hey, look, here's a Skrull. We're fighting against the Skrulls. And Rhodey goes, oh, okay, you've got a good reason for this. Never mind, we're on the same team.
Well, and then he has to question everybody until he reports back to the Chain of Command.
Well, yeah, and then he reports back to the president, and the president's like, oh, well, you know about the Skrulls now? Okay, well, I need to take you out.
Aye. That's a very short scene, though. Very short. It is. Like 60 seconds.
Yeah, I was really surprised that we did not get more of Rhodey in this episode, but it was a very full episode, so it makes sense. Because, yeah, we go back to Fury on his walk around Moscow, and we see
the little girl with the ball.
The little girl with the bouncy ball, and then immediately gets taken by some of Sonya's thugs. Sonya Falsworth.
She in the comics?
There's no Sonya directly, but she is possibly the granddaughter of James Falsworth, who is one of the Howling Commandos. In the MCU, there is the British, very regimental.
He's Union Jack.
Yeah. But he never gets named that in the MCU.
Well, yeah, but James Falsworth is the Union Jack.
Yes. And James Falsworth does have a daughter in the comics who is a heroine named Spitfire.
What's Spitfire's real name?
Jacqueline Falsworth. So both of those characters could potentially still exist in the MCU, and then this is Jacqueline's daughter, because, at this point, World War II is much farther away than it used to be.
Yeah, she'd be like 80. Yeah, they have a nice little song and dance between the two of them.
I enjoy their repartee. I especially enjoy her. Olivia Colman seems like she's having a lot of fun in this role.
Indeed. I like that back and forth. It almost seemed like they were testing each other to make sure they were the right.
That would make sense, that they want to make sure that each of the other one is who they say they are and isn't a Skrull.
And I totally believe that when Fury said, I let your bagman take me so I can see you, and she denounced him, I think he's being honest there, and her denouncement is validating his front.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
They just kept pointing it out so much. Fury's off his game. Fury's off his game. Fury's off his game. You used to be 3 steps ahead of everybody. And I'm like, no, he's like 10 steps ahead of everybody now. And he's taking you all out. He figured it out, man. That algorithm that he had all that access to, that probably ID'd a whole lot of Skrulls that nobody knew about except him.
Yeah, well, that's another question I have about Skrulls in general. Is there anyone who's helping them mix into society? Are they taking on people who have died? Are they taking on completely new identities? How is that working? How are they blending into our world?
Well, they're now using their memory tech to extract personality.
Right. Well, but that's the radicals. I'm talking about, when they originally came to Earth and seemed to be peaceful allies.
Do we have a Black Ops Skrull immigration program?
I mean, basically it'd be the Men in Black.
That's exactly where my brain went.
Yeah. I mean, Men in Black is technically a Marvel comic because it was published by Malibu, who was bought out by Marvel.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, we there's so much speculation. We're on episode 1, trying to theory craft.
Oh yeah.
I love it. But as you said earlier, massive cubes of salt.
Exactly.
But he did plant a camera in that room.
Yes, on that owl sculpture thing.
Mm-hmm.
They point it out very specifically as he does it, so I think I would have liked if they had been a little more subtle with that and then reveal it later. Like, they show him picking up the owl or something like that, or putting it on a clock face and him saying his line about, this clock fetish. Just have him pick up a clock and talk about the clock fetish thing and then put it back down, and then when you get the conversation later where they're listening in and watching, then you reveal at that point, oh, he put a a secret camera on there.
Well, and that totally validates that he is still on the game.
Yeah.
And that it just, for me, Fury's entire arc through this is going to be one complete misdirect, which is going to parallel the misdirect of having shape shifting antagonists.
Mm-hmm. So when do you think we would get that reveal then?
Well, let's see. Secret Invasion is slated for 6 episodes. So I would expect sometime probably halfway through the 5th episode.
Okay.
For the grand reveal to be made. And then we spend the rest of that episode sort of pivoting towards it. And then the 6th episode is springing.
I can see that.
It's just been a thing in serialized sci-fi and fantasy these days where you don't find out about the grand anything until the episode before.
Mm-hmm.
And then it happens quickly, and they still leave 20 minutes for an epilogue at the end.
Yeah, that I think has been Marvel's greatest weakness is their pacing on the television shows, where the ending feels rushed and then slow.
Yeah.
It feels like they could expand parts and contract parts and it would be just about perfect, but they just, I don't know, something is always a little off on the endings.
They spend a whole lot of episodes exploiting your cortisol response, stressing you out at the end. And then you get to the last episode where you're expecting a payoff, and there is one, but it doesn't equal the level of just personal stress you've had the last 5 episodes trying to deal with the super dramatic cliffhanger.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've talked about in larger TV, like even in Star Trek. Just on that note, Hard Season 1 and 2 did it every single episode. And on this high dramatic arc, and you end the episode and you're like, and then you get 10 weeks later and it's like, that's it? Really? And that's one of the reasons why that's one of the reasons why I have so much reluctance to embrace television in this format, is because 30 years ago we told great Star Trek stories and we capped each episode off. We didn't have high drama at the end and no closure. And so it's the lack of closure that's really, as a formula in show making, it's wearing itself.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, which is why I think Strange New Worlds has been such a breath of fresh air in the Star Trek world.
It is my favorite now.
Agreed.
So that scene gets all played out, and Sonya's like, you're not who I thought you were. Get out. Basically.
That's fine. I'll walk home with my bad knee.
Yeah.
With my bad knee.
Bad, yeah. Air quotes.
And now we finally get to New Skrullos.
New Skrullos. Yeah. I was mad at myself when they were mentioning how Gaia was angry and left earlier, and I should have immediately connected the dots. That's who Emilia Clarke was going to play.
Oh, well,
so mad at myself.
I watch all the Disney Plus shows with the subtitles on, and so the subtitles immediately tell you as soon as she has her first line, Gaia. So I think also I had read somewhere that Emilia Clarke is playing Talos's daughter.
Yeah, I went into it with a bit uninformed on that front.
I tried to, but I just go to enough comic book sites regularly for other news that just glancing, I will see things that tell me news like that before I even realize what I'm reading.
It's been very hard staying off of Twitter for the last few days.
I just muted a bunch of keywords.
So she basically is acting as a recruiter here in this scene.
Yeah, I would say so. It's hard to say what her position is. She seems, when we first meet her, it feels like she's pretty high up in the hierarchy, but then she kind of gets sent on this more grunt mission of just go get this. So I'm not sure what her role is in the organization, really. But yeah, she feels like the good cop of, hey, isn't it great? You can take your true form if you want, or if you want to be one of the warriors, then stay in your human shell. But while you're here, you get scroll produce. You can be yourself. You're
More of that exploiting vulnerability talk right there.
exactly.
Yeah, no, she does play several roles within this organization, and that sort of vibes with when you believe in the cause, you do whatever you're asked.
True. And it's also a pretty small organization. I mean, they say there's about 500 people at that location, and that's including just regular refugees who aren't actively fighting for the cause.
Yeah,
So you have to take whatever role is needed at any given point because there's not that many people to take the place.
and if we thought that, in Civil War that you could have 5 winter soldiers overthrow a government overnight, imagine what you could do with 5 well-trained soldiers who can shapeshift and look like anybody at a moment's notice.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
regime changing right there.
Well, of course, I thought about DS9 and the shapeshifters on Earth storyline.
Yep.
When O'Brien O'Brien comes up to Cisco and is like, "Do you know how many shapeshifters are on Earth right now?"
Yeah, 4.
4. It's like, yeah, they can do a lot if they're in the right positions, and being a shapeshifter, they can put themselves in the right positions.
Easier for them because they didn't have to eat.
Yeah.
But
But also, but then, as we see in this scene, this is the first time we actually see the fracking pods and the fact that the scrolls can not only take the shape but can take the mind of somebody else in order to fully ingratiate themselves into their role.
which completely gets around the drawbacks they had in Captain Marvel, where they were using passwords to
Right.
determine truth, and now you can't even use the password.
Yeah. At least if the scrolls have kidnapped the original and put them in a fracking pod.
Makes you wonder what happened to Ross.
Yeah, well, that's like I was saying, we didn't see Ross in a fracking pod. During the scene, we do see some of the people who are in those pods, and one of the people we see is the bomb builder. Even though we haven't actually seen him in the show yet. If you go back and watch it a second time, you'll see that one of the people in the pods is that bomb builder.
Okay. Well, that's a good observation.
Yeah, this is probably going to be one of those shows that you can watch over and over again and catch just that other little extra piece that they laid out. Spy thrillers are like that, where good spy thrillers where they leave you clues, and if you go back and watch it again, you're like, oh, okay, that piece of information there and that piece of information here tells me this. But the first time you watch it, you don't necessarily get all of that because you're just taking it in.
Yep.
Now, we talked a little bit about our 3 main characters listening in on Sonia and her discussion about the bomb builder and all of that. But I do want to come back to that scene because we're now in it in chronological order.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple of things in there that I specifically want to call out, which is first, the fun banter between Fury and Talos in this scene. Probably one of the biggest complaints about the Marvel movies and shows is the over-reliance on humor, especially in fight scenes. But I think this show gets the humor just right, where it's almost always in like downtime in between tense scenes, and it really just feels natural. The conversation, that I love you, but because of that I make fun of you relationship that guys tend to have.
Yep.
So that was a lot of fun. And then the other thing that I specifically wanted to call out, and brings me to one of my theories about where this show is going to head, is Fury points out that mercy is Talos's weakness. And, you know, we get that here, and then, you know, Gaia hits that note again when she says, you know, you always say it's the last warning, but there's always one more. So we get this pointed at a couple of times, and I'm really afraid, because I love Ben Mendelsohn and I love Talos, I'm really afraid that Talos's journey is going to be ending mercy. That he is going to basically go dark.
Mm.
He may not quite go to the side of the radicals, but that he will take things too far and become an antagonist to Fury instead of his friend.
It's interesting you say it that way, because that builds that Xavier Magneto dynamic where they were friends for so long and now they're antagonists. They can understand each other. We even had a chess metaphor in this game. So this episode, I don't know. I was thinking less severe, that Talos learns how to determine when to apply mercy better.
Okay.
Again, we're talking about character traits that have been brought up multiple times in one episode. The payoff is seeing them overcome the perceived frailty. And I say perceived because Nick Fury is just a bag of tricks.
Yeah, but again, because I think so much of this show is going to be people not being who they seem, and allegiances changing, and, you know, never knowing who's on your side. I think one way it could definitely go is with Talos turning at some point or another. And the scene later when Fury kills the bomb builder, who, as we've said, turns out to be a Skrull, Talos just looks so betrayed when Fury does that, and he's gives that "I said no" line, and it's just, you can feel the hurt and the betrayal there.
It's interesting because you pointed out earlier that they called out Fury 3 times about the blip. And this is Talos getting called out 3 times about mercy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see where they go with that. The fact that they hit these points multiple times in this first episode tells me that they're going to be an important part of that character's arc going forward.
I'm for this.
Although before they actually get to the bomb builders, there's that other fun moment of them going down the alleyway talking about their midlife crises.
What did you buy?
The Avengers. That was one of the lines that literally had me laughing out loud the first time I heard it. I was like, yeah, that's a Nick Fury line.
Yep. And we hear that Talos is 136 years old, but by human standards, he's not even 40 yet.
Yeah, that's a nice long life Skrulls have. If he's not even quite 40 yet, that means he's going to live at least 250 plus years.
Yeah.
By that math. if it's
100%
a straight ratio. Yeah, I'd take that. Now, here's where my one quibble with the plot and the character decisions comes up. Hill sees Gaia walk by and immediately starts following her. Now, this is a decently busy city area. There are other people walking around the entire time. Hill doesn't seem to know that it is specifically Gaia. She just says a person of interest. So what could have possibly set Hill off and said, yes, that person I saw walking past that building for 2 seconds is somebody I need to follow?
Good intelligence. It's a stretch. I know. It didn't happen on screen. We didn't see it.
Yeah. If we had gotten one line, something that just said something's off about her, those clothes don't fit that area, or something, just anything to give us a reason why she did it, rather than just her immediately getting out of the car and going, hey, I'm following someone.
That's a good point.
Whenever we get motiveless action, that tends to bug me. That's kind of my pet peeve of, there's no logical reason for this happening. There's nothing said that tells us. If we had just gotten that one line of, she doesn't fit here, it shows us Maria's intelligence.
They'll have a thing at the end that might help address that.
Okay. I think I know where you're going with this, but we'll see.
You're pretty intuitive. Probably got it down.
So yeah, she follows Gaia. Gaia quickly takes her down. Got that scroll strength going for her.
Mm-hmm.
And Talos picks up the pursuit, and here we get probably the strongest emotional beat of the episode, is the confrontation between Talos and Gaia here underground.
His appeal.
Yeah. Where it's definitively stated that Soren has died, and died since after Gaia left, which I found interesting. Yeah, it seems like it's been pretty recent, and specifically says that Gravik's people are the ones that killed her. So it doesn't quite turn Gaia at this point, but she does seem to be affected by it, because as soon as she runs off, as soon as she's out of sight of everyone, she kind of breaks down there. One of the things I love about the MCU is their casting. They are great at getting the right actor for the right role, and I think Emilia Clarke does an excellent job with the material she's been given in this episode.
I do too, and I think it's really nice after, I haven't seen everything Emilia Clarke has done, but after a series of scathing reviews where the actress didn't get the character right, or the character was written poorly for Emilia, I'm really hoping that she'll hit her stride with this one.
Yeah.
The end of Game of Thrones came with a lot of poor reviews, but I firmly put that on the writers. Terminator Genesis, officially don't recognize that as part of the canon, just like every other Terminator film after Terminator 2, for reasons.
Yeah. Although I think she looked the part of Sarah Connor.
Yeah, I think she looked it and spoke it very well.
Yeah.
I think there could have been more opportunities for the strength that we saw from Sarah in Terminator 2.
Mm-hmm.
Especially from a young girl who had been raised, from childhood by a Terminator. But, that's another podcast.
Yeah.
On the other side of Geek Town. Are we at the bar?
We are at the bar.
We see Fury make friend with a guy, pay for his beer or his vodka, and then sits down with Hill. And they talk about how that kind of behavior is what kept the Cold War from going hot, making friends with the locals.
Yes, and Fury uses a colloquialism that could either mean spies or people of color, which is why we get the joke of Maria saying, "Oh, you can't use that word," and he says, "No, you can't use that word."
Oof. You caught that. That's great. I love that.
Yeah, it's the word they use is spook. And
Right.
and
Yeah. No, I've
it
seen Back to the Future. I know where this is going.
yeah. I mean, it's in modern parlance, it is still I've still occasionally see it as a term for spies, but in earlier days, it
Yeah.
is a very negative word for people of color, for African Americans. I laughed, but at the same time, I was like, oh, okay, we're going there, are we?
So yeah, this is where she slights him for not making a chess move.
Yeah, I mean, chess is used in so many spy movies as a metaphor for playing the game of one side versus the other and making your moves and using your pawns and all of that. And they play a little bit with that here of him always, she says, you used to always be 3 moves ahead of me and now you don't even know if you want to play.
Yep. Yep. And that's where I'm like, nah, he's already solved the game. He's got this Azulad. I can use that as a verb.
Well, like I said, because in this moment he calls out, "I had a crisis of faith and it followed me up to the space station." I like to think that he was being honest with her at that moment. And so even if he is faking some of his lack of ability, like his knee and that sort of thing, I still think that mentally he may not be fully in the right place for what he needs to do at this point, and that getting there will be part of the point of this show.
I think that's one very well articulated way to look at it. My side over here is I don't want to minimize trauma for anybody,
Okay.
but on the spectrum of responses you can have to trauma is you can act in a way where the trauma has taken something away from you, or you can act in such a way where trauma has reinvigorated.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think, in my opinion, that Nick Fury is the type of person who saw himself getting turned into dust and then came back 5 years later with a second chance to really do what he feels he was put here to do. When he got turned into dust, there were the Avengers. He may have felt that he got slack, he got lax. We can see from the end of Infinity War that Hill's calling out that there's bogeys over Wakanda, and 2 minutes later, snap. So they just got the intel about the aliens that had been fighting in Wakanda for the better part of an hour. Took an hour for that intel to get to him, and then snap. So I think this is Nick Fury going, I got distracted and I got complacent, and I already lost Shield once, and then I died, and then I came back and had a whole list of things to do. And I think he's knocking items off the list.
I can definitely see that interpretation, but I do think the very next scene points against it, because we get that flashback of his snap.
Yeah.
And he's lying on the bed, and to me that does not look like a man who is determined to now cross things off of a list and with this second chance. This looks like a man who has been beat down and is tired and was destroyed by that moment. And remembering it is painful, not in a way that is motivating.
I can see that. That's one of the great things about our discussion. It's as nuanced and about face as this series is purported to be anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things
show,
I love about getting a guest on these deep dives is having somebody with a differing opinion that we can talk it out and bring our evidence and say, well, I think it's this because of this, and you think it's that because of this, and yeah, I'm really enjoying our talk. So
Yeah, this has been great. You mentioned earlier in the show when we were talking about Nick's bum knee, you had said that like that's the kind of act that you put on even if you think no one's looking.
mm-hmm.
And to me, the bed scene is part of that. If he's got everybody so convinced that the blip broke him, then everyone's going to underestimate what he's got coming. Now, is it good drama for Fury to be on top at the end and having duped this massive intel group versus the drama of him overcoming personal trouble, which Kevin Feige had said that I think we're out of phase 4 now, but the next phases were supposed to be very personal challenges. Nick overcoming what he faced with the blip would absolutely fit into that. I'm just saying he overcame it right after the blip, but other people are saying he's overcoming it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see where it goes.
Well, right now it's going to the dramatic crescendo of the episode, I guess.
Well, before we get to Red Square, we get Gaia with I believe this scroll's name is Brogan.
Yes.
They don't actually say it in the episode, but credits.
Turns out I did have whatchamacallits on subtitles, because I remember that name.
And she brings what we assume are the bombs, and she's obviously having a change of heart at this moment because she says, let's postpone the strike. And Brogan says something interesting at this point. He says, thanks to you, we have the bait, not the weapon. He's referring to the bombs as bait rather than as something offensive. And, the fact that Brogan, when he talked to Gravik, was like, hey, Nick Fury's back. Great, it's just me and you that know this. It makes me think that part of this whole plan was to bring Nick Fury out. That it's not just about the planet, but in Talos's first conversation with Fury back on the roof, he says Gravik was hurt more than most by your abandonment. And so it makes me think that this is personal to Gravik. He doesn't just want the planet, he wants Nick Fury, and he wants to see him hurt.
Well, yeah, I definitely am on board with that.
I can't wait for the big showdown between them where we find out all this backstory of why Gravik was so hurt by Nick's going up into space.
That'll be fun to see.
But we don't get that this episode.
And the next sequence is there's an older woman hailing a cab.
Yes.
Who is this person? What is she doing here? Oh,
it's Gaia. And the cab driver is Talos.
And yeah, he tells him about the community and what they're planning.
Yeah. Now, what are your thoughts on Gaia at this moment? Do you think she's being a double agent, a triple agent?
I mean, it really depends on what the goal of the cause is, which you're sort of iffy on, but you highlighted one of its tent poles is to hurt Nick Fury.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the Skrulls who are in this organization would be hell-bent on just hurting Nick Fury.
No.
They're there for some righteous cause about taking a world for themselves and making a home, finally at last. So that's one thing. But maybe one of the ways to get there is by removing Nick Fury as an obstacle, and that's what Gravik has communicated to Gaia. And because Gaia's father is close to Nick, Gaia tells her father what he needs to hear to make sure Nick is present.
Yeah, it's hard to say. it feels genuine in the moment that she's trying to help, but at the same time, she's like, there's going to be 3 couriers there, including me, and she doesn't betray the scrolls at any moment in the plan with the bags.
But none of them had bombs on them.
Do you think she knew that?
I don't know if she knew that or not, but Gravik's plan was not to. It was very. Oh, what was his name? Ozymandias. Do you think I would tell you what my plan was if I did? If there's any possibility you could afford it? No.
Right. Yeah.
Bombs had already been planted, and whether or not the people carrying the decoy bags thought they were carrying bombs or knew that they were carrying decoy bombs, I guess we could take away like what are the motivations if they thought they had the bombs but they actually didn't, versus if they knew the whole time the bombs were already there and they were bait to draw in.
Yeah. Again, no one is quite what they seem here, so we can't tell for sure whether they knew, especially Gaia. It's just impossible to tell if she knew she was part of the decoy plan or if she thought she was actually helping her dad or what was going on there.
Well, we'll be able to tell based on her reaction to the events of the end of this episode
this
in the next
episode. This is true.
Because Nick, I mean, they show up at the square.
Yeah, which I have to point out, they did not film in Moscow at all, other than establishing shots.
Right.
But the lead actors were never in Moscow, and I think they did a great job of finding locations in England, which is where they filmed this, that matched that decor and that feeling.
I would agree.
It felt like they were in Red Square even though they were in England the entire time.
That and using the sophisticated visual technology they use to replace green screen. Sort of have a seamless background that even the actors can see and feel like they're acting in.
Did they shoot in the volume?
I don't know what that word means.
Oh, the volume it's that technology.
The name for the screen display?
Yeah, where they have the big 360 or very close to 360 screens as the background.
I just assume that since Disney has the technology, anytime that they film something on set somewhere, they're using that on location.
Yeah, I mean that to me that looked like genuine location filming. It's hard to say. We'll have to wait until the Marvel assembled behind the scenes of Secret Invasion.
I mean, if the last time I hadn't seen that tech was in Mandalorian, which is obviously trying to emulate an alien environment, I don't know how I'd feel. Like I think they could use that technology to render an environment that is true to us and have us not.
Oh yeah, no, I think it's definitely possible that they could be doing that. I just don't know if they did in this case. I think there were enough there were stairs and usually the volume it seems to be used for mainly flat open areas where you can't really like climb stairs or go down a ramp or have a seesaw act next to you.
Really easy to use that tech to emulate an explosion behind an actor.
That's true.
Who needs to harm you? No falling rocks at all. We're just gonna
have
that behind you, and then we're gonna CG in some rocks afterwards. It'll be
blow a little fan so your hair flies.
Yeah.
Now, I loved the reveal of Gravik here. It was so good with Fury seeing the same girl with the bouncy ball. Yep. And then he follows her and she turns into the guy at the bar, and then the woman who was on the street kissing somebody else when he was taking his walk. So Gravik has been there watching him the entire time. And then finally he shifts into what I refer to as his default human appearance.
Yeah, that was a really good lead up visually into just telling the audience, yeah, I know who you are. I know where you've been. Don't try anything.
Yeah.
Which is why he has to play dumb all the time. He doesn't know who's who.
And yeah, the bags were empty, but the bombs had already been set, and Gravik hits that detonator switch, and boom goes the dynamite, to quote Fury.
Yeah, and then it's just chaos as Gravik seems to be making a very calm escape. I'm always suspicious of calm people in the middle of explosions.
Yeah.
Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3, that lackey blows up the Chinese theater and then he just walks out with a messed up tuxedo and nobody is like, what?
Hey. What? Yeah. If you're ever trying to figure out who did it, look for the guy who is perfectly calm when everyone else is freaking out.
I mean, I learned that from, was it Game of Shadows, the Sherlock movie, where they were looking for the guy in Wire or something like that. They were looking for a guy, and they were like, well, if he's been trained, then he's going to be trained to not react to dangerous situations. So they cause a massive scene and they get about 2 seconds to spot the guy who's not reacting. And they're like, okay, it's him. So yes, everybody, if you're in the middle of a crazy, weird situation and you see somebody there who's acting like everything is capiche, follow them because they likely have an out.
There you go. And if Fury had successfully followed him, he might have stopped him from
what happened?
Disguising himself as Fury and then shooting Maria, which shocked me. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I don't know if profanity is allowed here. I swore I wholly effed it in that moment.
Yeah. On that note, I had this in my notes earlier, but I didn't feel an appropriate place to bring it up. But I'm kind of annoyed that Samuel L. Jackson did not get the first official F-bomb in the MCU. He got so close with the snap. And it was like, okay, at least they allude to it. If they're not going to put an F-bomb in the MCU, at least they'll do this. And then they actually put an F-bomb in the MCU. Yeah. And it wasn't Samuel L. motherfucking Jackson.
And it wasn't even well used.
No.
Because it was just there.
Yeah.
It was funny, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It was absolutely funny. But I'm totally expecting Deadpool 3 to be like, Deadpool meandering about how he didn't get the first F-bomb. and the whole movie will have a subplot where other people around him start to say it and his hand is just like, nope, we only get one this film and it's gonna be me. And then in like the climax of the film, some nobody is like, well, that was effing weird, and Ryan Reynolds like shoots him like 8 times. Just beep 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 beep. How am I supposed to get around these beeping sensors if somebody around here is going to say it before me?
I like it. I can definitely see that happening, and I would very much enjoy it.
Or Hugh Jackman gets to say it.
Yeah, that'll work. But
yeah, Maria Hill bleeds out,
and you have a theory that you have been alluding to. Is your theory that Maria was a Skrull?
No.
Oh, okay.
My theory is that Fury arranged Hill's fake death, and she's not dead.
Okay.
Fury has already worked with Hill in the past to do some crazy subversion. She showed up in the tank. Was it during Civil War, or was it?
Yeah.
It was Winter Soldier?
No, it was Civil War.
Yeah, she just takes off the helmet. She's like, that thing was crushing my head.
Oh, wait, no, that was... that was Winter Soldier.
I think that was Winter Soldier.
That was Winter Soldier.
So she's already worked with him behind the scenes for some cinematic duplicity before. This is just next level. That's where I'm going. If Kobe Smulders is done with the MCU, that's great. She had a 12-year run. Great for her. But I'd be hard-pressed to say we lose Ross and Hill in the same episode.
I don't think we lost Ross.
I don't think so either.
Because he was a Skrull, and I'm pretty sure he's showing up in Thunderbolts.
He is. So that's fair.
So I don't think we lost Ross. So I think the fact that it goes straight from her death to special guest star Kobe Smulders.
Yeah.
I think that might be it for her.
If I'm right, that's good misdirect. If I'm not right, then they just did that. And wow, Hill is dead. No big story for you. You blip, and then 2 years later, you get shot in Moscow and die.
Yeah, it's a shame because, in the comics, Maria Hill has gotten quite a few good stories, including Secret Invasion.
Well, and it harkens back to Fury's words, the last time I trusted somebody, I lost an eye. And he referred to Hill as I feel like he referred to Hill as one of his eyes in a previous, somebody who watches out for things or something like that. So, but she trusted Fury, and that got her killed.
Yeah.
Finally, a shapeshifter does something good with their abilities, even though it sucks.
Well, I think all the shapeshifters here used their abilities well that we saw.
Yeah, very stealthy, subtle, not very outlandish at all.
Yeah, very fitting to a spy thriller, which is what this show seems to be. A spy thriller with a sci-fi twist.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to seeing where the rest of these episodes go, and I'm also looking forward to continuing my conversation with you about these episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. In 5 weeks' time, this will all be over, and we'll know the who's who of the whodunit. But the conversations that we have here are going to be so insightful. I can't wait to return next week.
Thanks. Yeah, me too. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you for joining me, Dag. Would you like to do any plugs? Tell people where they can find you?
Yeah, if you enjoyed this episode, or if you want to just yell at me, you can find me on Twitter at TrekNexus. That's pretty much the only hole on the internet you'll find me on. So follow me there.
All right. And thank you for joining me. And thank you, listeners, for joining me as well. We will see you next episode. While I just said thank you to both Dag and the listeners, you can never say it enough, so thank you all. We'll be back next week to discuss the next episode, but if you have your own thoughts on this one, please send them my way. Or if you want me to discuss a topic in a future scripted episode, I'm always looking for those. You can send those, or just comments on the show in general, by sending an email to welcome2geektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome to Geektown, Twitter @GeektownPodcast, or Mastodon @welcome2geektown@mastodon.social. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, why not become a patron at patreon.com/welcome to Geektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, audio outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show so we can all tell them,
welcome to Geektown, population, us.
Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Levitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All of their sound clips of the copyrighted material, their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.